I am a 56-year-old male who recently became aware of an affair my wife, Renee, 51, had been engaged in. The female in question had undergone an STD test. Upon returning from her friend's extravagant wedding, she had kept this test hidden from me for several months, which has led to suspicions of infidelity. I apologize for jumping to conclusions without concrete evidence or confrontation. However, as a couple, there are certain things that may not be disclosed immediately, which can be somewhat understandable. Allow me to provide some background information about us. We have been married for 13 years and do not have any children together. She is my first wife, and I am her second husband. She is in her early 20s and she was previously married and has a 23-year-old child. The daughter of the aforementioned woman is a 23-year-old. She is the product of her mother's first marriage, which lasted only 5 years. Her mother's ex-husband was abusive, which led her to flee with her daughter. The author of this text embraced the daughter as his own and provided her with support for her education. After completing her education, she pursued an executive career and has been residing in Manhattan ever since. The author, on the other hand, had a romantic relationship with his college girlfriend until his mid-20s. In her 30s, the relationship eventually ended and she moved out 4 months ago. Renee attended her friend's wedding, where her friend was marrying an exceedingly wealthy businessman. This individual could be described as incredibly affluent, as evidenced by his ownership of a private yacht and his participation in luxurious winter vacations in the Bahamas, despite being in his 70s. It is not my intention to pass judgment on anyone here. Renee opted to abstain from the wedding. She was already preoccupied with her friend's lavish nuptials, and attending it would have entailed enduring her friend's ostentatious display of wealth. Consequently, Renee attended the wedding, returned, and proceeded to voice her disapproval of her friend's actions, characterizing her as a gold digger who had secured a wealthy husband. This was a predictable response. She proceeded to express her discontent for several days. A few days later, we proceeded to move on. Let us now fast forward to the present. I developed a runny nose and flu-like symptoms, prompting me to consider consulting an online doctor. It was at this point that I discovered that Renee had a membership for a fitness app that offered free physician consultations. I proceeded to download the app and attempted to log in using her email ID. She received a verification code, and although I do not recall her whereabouts at the time, she was not nearby to respond when I called out to her. I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter and retrieved the verification code from it. I proceeded to schedule an appointment with the physician, consulted with them, and then went to pick up the prescribed medication. Everything proceeded according to plan. However, when I arrived at the pharmacy, the pharmacist I inquired as to whether the doctor had recommended any tests. I responded in the affirmative but decided to commence with the medication first. The pharmacist strongly recommended that I undergo the recommended tests as the flu was spreading rapidly in our neighborhood. Upon returning home, I booked the tests through the same application. While doing so, I stumbled upon the history of tests that had been previously conducted. Upon scheduling the appointment through the application, I discovered that Renee had undergone an STD test. Upon returning from her friend's wedding, my initial reaction was to question why she would do that. I recalled that after returning from the wedding, she had visited her daughter and stayed there for a week. At that time, I hadn't suspected anything, but now all these pieces are starting to fit together. It is with some reluctance that I must admit that she must have done something inappropriate at her friend's wedding. She subsequently underwent testing and, in order to avoid any sexual contact with me, went to stay with her daughter for a week. I reviewed the test report, which showed negative results. This occurred yesterday in the evening after dinner. Renee inquired as to whether I had used her email ID to log into the app. I conceded that I had taken the authentication code from her phone because she was not present. I had anticipated her reaction, but was surprised when she did not respond immediately. However, later on, she took actions that prompted me to log out of the app. I did not notice this until the following morning, which is today. When I arrived at the diagnostic center for the test, I attempted to access the appointment through the app, only to discover that I had been logged out and that she had changed her login email as well. This was an extremely frustrating turn of events. Fortunately, the center had registered the appointment in their system, allowing me to proceed with the test. Upon returning home, I had intended to confront her thoroughly, but she was not at home. I called her to inquire about. I attempted to ascertain her whereabouts, but she did not respond. Instead, she sent me a text message stating that she was at her mother's residence and would return at a late hour. I am currently uncertain about how to channel my anger and frustration. I have strong suspicions that she engaged in infidelity, but a part of me is still open to listening to her and wants to believe that I might be mistaken. Update 1. I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who has offered their support. I am grateful to you all for connecting with me and speaking to me during those anxious hours. Your words helped me find some peace of mind. I would now like to pick up where I left off. Renee did not return home that night. Instead, she spent the night at her mother's place. As a result, I grew restless and was unable to sleep. My mind was filled with various unsettling possibilities. The following morning, when she came back, I was unable to contain my emotions any longer. I questioned her about her recent behavior and why she had revoked my access to the application. She acted as though she had no idea what I was talking about. I was becoming increasingly frustrated, so I confronted her and asserted that I knew she had taken an STD test after attending her friend's wedding. I also understood the implications of this. She vehemently denied my accusations, claiming that the test was merely a routine checkup. Although I lacked concrete evidence beyond that report, my intuition strongly suggested that she had been unfaithful. I spoke from my gut feeling, insisting that I knew what she was concealing. Our arguments intensified, with her portraying herself as the victim of false accusations, while I pressed her for a confession. Matters escalated to the point where I informed her that I would disclose the results of the tests to her mother and daughter. Furthermore, I stated that I would contact her friend to reveal that she had engaged in sexual intercourse with her husband. In retrospect, this may have been an impulsive decision, but the situation had become so tumultuous that I had lost my composure. After several rounds of intense arguments, emotional manipulation, and emotional breakdowns, she finally confessed 2 days later. Subsequently, those 2 days were characterized by a profound sense of distress. She conceded to engaging in sexual intercourse with a dancer at her friend's bachelorette party. She reiterated the common refrain employed by those who have been unfaithful, namely that the act in question was insignificant and devoid of emotional attachment. Nevertheless, I experienced a sense of hurt when she engaged in intimate physical contact with others, even if it was merely for recreational purposes. I subsequently departed from the residence and proceeded to. On that Sunday, my office, which houses a small consultancy business, was quiet. The office was deserted, offering me a peaceful space to collect my thoughts. Despite reaching out to me via calls and texts, she was unable to elicit a response. I ended up living in the office for a week, visibly distressed. My absence was noted by colleagues, who observed my repeated outfit choices and the few gym t-shirts I wore. The shirts were eventually stacked in my car boot. Upon my return home, I found Renee there, inquiring about my next steps. She urged us to move forward and promised not to repeat her actions. I expressed that our relationship could never return to its previous state. I was not in the right frame of mind to make decisions and needed time to think, perhaps even to move on. I requested solitude during this period. She proposed that she consider residing with her mother or daughter. However, Renee was reluctant to leave. She pleaded for one last opportunity to repair our marriage, willing to do anything except move out. She suggested spending time together, going on dates, and taking vacations to repair the fractures in our relationship. Spending time with her was the last thing I desired after learning the truth. After careful consideration, I rejected this proposal. I was unable to reconcile my conscience and thus opted to relocate my belongings to the guest bedroom, maintaining minimal communication with her after a few days. She subsequently came to inquire about my decision and informed me that I was not willing to reconcile with her. She persisted in suggesting that we give it another try, but I remained firm in my refusal. I explained that even sharing the same household was becoming untenable for me. The situation was untenable for me, and if she did not leave, I would be forced to do so. She remained adamant about staying in the house and attempting to salvage our marriage. I felt I had conveyed my stance clearly, so I proceeded to pack my belongings and depart. I found temporary lodging in a motel and began searching for affordable rental options. A distant friend of mine had recently put his house up for a short-term lease, so I opted for that and settled into his one-bedroom apartment. I therefore elected to enter into a term lease and took up residence in the aforementioned property. I have since been residing in a bedroom condominium. Additionally, I was advised by an individual in response to my previous post to undergo testing due to concerns about potential infection from my wife. I followed this advice and was fortunate to receive negative test results. Renee initially reached out to me, but I eventually blocked her and requested that she refrain from contacting me. She informed her daughter that I had abandoned her for a trivial reason. She initially attempted to mediate our situation. I initially avoided disclosing the reason, but over time, I sensed that she was becoming resentful towards me. Renee had been providing false information, so I decided to be honest with her. She is an adult and capable of understanding the situation. She assured me that she would not pressure me into reconciling with her mother and that she would continue to love me regardless of my decision. She felt angry with Renee for risking our previously stable marriage for a moment of enjoyment. I assured her that I would never force. Despite the altered dynamics between Renee and me, her relationship with me remained unchanged. She is still my daughter, and we maintain contact and communication. However, we intentionally avoid discussing Renee. This is an ongoing process. In a recent development, I received a call from Renee's friend, Lily. She is a 49-year-old female, the same friend whose wedding Renee disrupted, causing trouble in our marriage. She delivered unexpected news. Renee had been making advances toward her wealthy husband. I was taken aback to learn that Renee had connected with him on social media, engaged in flirtatious exchanges, and even sent him explicit photographs. I do not intend to pass judgment on the man, but he did indeed reciprocate her advances, and the two of them even embarked on a vacation together in an island country, the name of which I currently recall to be X. This continued for over 3 to 4 months, but Lily only recently discovered it. I also informed her about our separation, as she was unaware of it. Lily expressed feelings of disappointment, as she had wanted to team up with me to seek revenge on Renee. I inquired about her husband's involvement, as he was equally culpable. She explained that leaving her husband would not be a straightforward decision for her at this time. She was focused on pursuing Renee and sought my assistance. I agreed to provide any necessary support, except for actively pursuing Renee for investigative purposes. I did not want to reopen old wounds that had taken months to heal. She understood and appreciated my stance, assuring me that she would reach out if she required assistance. What transpired next was this: Renee went on a date with Lily's husband, but Lily was tracking her husband's phone and caught them in a compromising situation. In a hotel room, Renee engaged in a physical altercation with Lily, hurling insults such as "gold digger." However, Lily persisted and filed a case of assault against Renee. Her husband also supported her, as refusing to do so would have led to a costly divorce. Renee found herself isolated, as the hotel staff provided statements against her. They were influenced by Lily, who had the financial means to do so, while Renee had none. According to Lily, Renee initiated the confrontation, but Lily delivered a powerful punch that left Renee with bruises. The authorities contacted the police, resulting in Renee being released with a minor fine and a warning to stay away from them. Despite this, Renee managed to gain access to the premises and vandalized Lily's vehicle, leaving everyone perplexed about her actions. She displayed such recklessness that she did not even bother to check for surveillance cameras before entering the campus. Her actions were captured on camera, and Lily had her charged with trespassing and property damage. I learned about this second incident from Renee when she called me seeking assistance initially. I considered terminating the call, but she implored me to assist, stating that she had no other resources. I ultimately decided to provide her with assistance, and she promised to repay me for the fine. She also requested that I maintain confidentiality regarding this matter with her daughter. I was curious about her intentions, so I inquired about her objectives. She asserted that she was securing her future, claiming that I had abandoned her. However, she clarified that her goal was to pursue a romantic interest's husband. She asserted that she saw no other viable option and highlighted Lily's actions as a precedent. Similarly, Renee attempted to pursue a wealthy man and cause his divorce from his wife of 20 years, intending to do the same to Lily. Upon hearing this, I felt a sense of disgust. I subsequently informed Lily about Renee's plan, which made me feel like a gossipy schoolgirl. However, Renee was I considered myself to be in the wrong for pursuing another woman's husband, and thus felt compelled to act. While I did not derive any pleasure from it, I found the competition between these two friends over luring an older, wealthy man to secure their futures to be rather absurd. I could not help but congratulate the former wife. The wife of this affluent man recently contacted me to discuss her desire for a divorce. While I had been contemplating divorce, I had intentionally postponed it for two reasons. Firstly, I have no intention of marrying again, so the current lack of official divorce does not affect me. Secondly, if we were to divorce, Renee would have made substantial demands. I am the owner of a business, and aside from the house where Renee resides in the aforementioned property, which would be divided between my sister and me immediately following the dissolution of our marriage. I sought counsel from my attorney regarding this matter and was advised to update my will to exclude Renee as a beneficiary of my assets. This would ensure that, in the event that we do not proceed with the divorce and I am no longer alive, Renee would not receive any inheritance. Renee had presented a comprehensive list of divorce conditions, including the house, 1 year of financial support, and a substantial alimony was also a topic of discussion. It was claimed that the motivation for seeking a divorce was to facilitate the marriage of Renee to Lily's husband. It was said that he had promised to divorce Lily if Renee divorced me first. I informed her that I would discuss this matter with my lawyer and revert. The discussion is ongoing and I will provide an update once it is resolved. Update 3: the divorce is now finalized and Renee receives nothing in the settlement. It is clear that Lily and her husband played a significant role in this. Following Renee's request for a divorce and the delineation of her terms, I sought counsel from my attorney and apprised him of Renee's intentions. My legal counsel advised a strategic approach, guiding me throughout the process. He recommended that I inform Lily about Renee's plan and simultaneously delay the divorce proceedings as much as possible. I followed his advice accordingly, providing various excuses to postpone the divorce proceedings when Renee inquired about it. These excuses included my busy schedule and other reasons. As her patience waned, I indicated my readiness to sign the divorce papers but without providing any compensation. I presented her with revised terms, allowing her to keep the car and permitting her to reside in the house, which was mine, for an additional 6 months. She was dissatisfied with these terms and insisted on financial compensation, citing the need to discuss the matter with my lawyer. I continued to delay the proceedings and eventually she reluctantly accepted my terms and signed the divorce papers. The divorce papers, however, tell a more complex story. In reality, Lily had significant control over her husband, influencing him to comply with her wishes to preserve their marriage. The couple devised a plan to undermine Renee, although her husband was equally involved in the affair with Renee. Lily placed the blame solely on Renee and vowed to ruin her, while forgiving her husband as part of their scheme. Lily's husband assured Renee that he would divorce Lily and marry her. The objective was to exert pressure on Renee to instigate the divorce proceedings. The intention was to ensure that she would not receive any funds from the divorce settlement. My aim was to protect my finances, while Lily sought to exact revenge on Renee. Her husband complied with Lily's wishes to salvage their marriage. Renee's naivety led her to fall into their trap. She ultimately agreed to my conditions and signed the divorce papers, paving the way for her to marry Lily's husband once this matter was settled. It was resolved that Lily's husband should divorce her and marry Renee. However, this is when the truth came to light. Renee had been communicating with Lily's husband, believing it to be him. However, she then received a call from him, which turned out to be Lily on the line. Renee was bewildered upon discovering the truth, having lost everything. She then came to me in a state of defeat, accusing me of being complicit in the plot to take revenge on her. I admitted to it, as it safeguarded my hard-earned money. She had attempted to exert emotional control over me, questioning how I could betray her when she believed I was the only one who would support her. This seemed ironic, given that she had been the one to engage in secretive affairs and pursue her friend's husband to secure her future. Consequently, I was portrayed as the antagonist for protecting my own interests. I assured her that I had done nothing wrong in safeguarding my finances. I have provided her with a fair level of compensation. Technically, she should not have received any payments since she engaged in infidelity. Nevertheless, she was driving a car that I purchased and residing in my house for over a year even after our separation. She threatened to inform her daughter about how I supposedly betrayed her and left her destitute. In response, I provided her with all the details of how her mother used her. She then proceeded to make a series of threats, including allegations of manipulation and forgery, before concluding the conversation. However, given that the divorce is now settled and the aforementioned charges lack merit, I am confident that such actions will prove futile. The incident occurred just a week ago, and I now feel a sense of liberation. With the divorce finalized, I will regain possession of my house from Renee within a few months. I did not seek retribution against her, nor do I believe I did. I merely safeguarded my finances, which I see as a reasonable course of action regardless of external opinion. I remain unperturbed and look forward to a peaceful life, having no intention of entering into any serious relationships again. That being said, I will now move on to another story. Stay tuned for the next one. I am a 43-year-old man. I am a 43-year-old man who has been residing in Chicago for the past 2 years due to my occupational commitments. My spouse, Jill, is 39 years of age, and our son is 9 years old. Prior to the advent of the pandemic, my adult children resided in our hometown of Houston. I previously held a position of I managed a garage with a friend while my wife, Jill, held an executive position. Our income was not large, but it was sufficient for us to live comfortably in our own house, which was inherited from my family. My parents had retired early and relocated to our countryside farm to enjoy a tranquil life surrounded by nature. Every 2 weeks, my father loaded his truck with dairy products, fruits, vegetables, and seasonal crops like potatoes, all of which were grown on our farm. He sent them to us, which allowed us to save a significant amount of money. Life was going well until the sudden impact of the pandemic. In 2019, the global pandemic forced everyone to stay indoors, resulting in a significant reduction in vehicle traffic and a rise in mortgage difficulties. Our garage was unable to withstand these challenges and was forced to close, leading to the termination of the lease. Furthermore, Jill's company also shut down, resulting in her losing her job. Despite these setbacks, we were fortunate to have a reliable source of grains, vegetables, and milk from my parents' farm. The savings they had accumulated were being depleted at a rate that was faster than had been anticipated. Fortunately, however, government and local community support in the form of sponsored groceries and essential supplies came to their rescue, enabling families like theirs to cope with these challenging times when restrictions began to ease. He considered finding a job because reopening the garage under those circumstances seemed impossible. Unfortunately, however, most garages had permanently closed down due to their owners struggling with mortgage payments. The few remaining open businesses were not hiring new employees, with owners instead continuing to manage the business themselves. Jill faced a similar situation and was unable to return to her previous job after extensive searching and reaching out to various contacts. One of my distant cousins informed me about a job opportunity in Chicago at a car manufacturing facility with a good salary. Given the depleted state of our savings, I had no other choice but to accept it. The probability of securing employment in Houston was low. I departed for the position, leaving my wife and son behind. The company provided me with sustenance and lodging, and I was permitted 15 days of leave every 6 months to visit my family. The initial year proceeded smoothly despite the distance. Jill and I remained in contact, and she frequently urged me to strive harder so that we could reunite in Chicago. I resided in a company-provided dormitory, and although the factory was situated in the suburbs, the cost was considerable. We were aware that the journey would be lengthy, but we clung to the hope that we would soon be living together after long hours at work. Talking to Jill was the only thing that rejuvenated and motivated me. Following my last trip back home, approximately 6 or 7 months ago, changes began to occur. Initially, I did not notice any significant alterations except that she was not available for me every day. Given her previous role as a homemaker, it was understandable that she could always make time for me when I called. However, her new job meant that it was no longer realistic to expect the same level of availability. During my last vacation back home, I did observe some changes in her behavior. She became more guarded about herself and her phone, and she did not speak as openly as before. It seemed as though she was being cautious about her words, which was different from her previous demeanor. Prior to that, when she had just upon commencing her position, she encountered significant challenges in her professional relationship with her superior. She was employed as a secretary in the office of the CEO of a startup company, where the recently graduated founders exhibited a lack of professionalism and respect towards their employees. She found it challenging to cope with this environment and eventually resigned after a few months. Following her resignation, she sent a detailed email outlining the toxic workplace dynamics to the CEO, prompting him to take action and improve his behavior. Many employees were leaving the company due to his negative attitude, and behavior had a detrimental impact on her income, which was a crucial source of financial support for the household. Despite this, she was able to save a significant portion of her earnings. This contributed to the acceleration of the plan to live together, leading her to withdraw her resignation and return to her job. Her situation improved, and she informed me that her boss had become much more polite and respectful. Consequently, things seemed to have settled. Fast forward to 3 months ago, Jill informed me that her boss, who is the CEO, was going to a Five. The CEO invited her to the Day Investor Summit in Dublin, but she initially declined because she was unable to leave her son unattended for an extended period. However, the CEO offered to cover the expenses for her son to join them. I must admit that I lack insight into the operations of corporate companies, particularly with regard to spending on seemingly unnecessary trips. Nevertheless, I left the decision to Jill, who believed it was essential for her career and decided to go. I might appear possessive, but I did feel uneasy about her trip, though I kept my concerns to myself. Throughout the duration of her trip, she maintained regular communication with me, providing updates on a daily basis. We engaged in daily video calls with our son, even during the trip, and he expressed immense excitement about visiting a new place for the first time, as it was his inaugural experience leaving Houston. Gradually, I observed a relaxation in my own demeanor following the trip. I did not witness any discernible alterations in Jill's behavior that would suggest the onset of a new pattern, such as a noticeable shift in her attention towards me or a change in her emotional proximity. I would not have shared this experience if I had not returned home last month. I intentionally concealed the precise date of my visit, with the intention of surprising her. I have employed this strategy on previous occasions. On this occasion, her reaction was more shocked than joyful when she saw me at the door. Her face did not light up upon seeing me. Instead, it appeared serious despite her attempts to feign excitement. It is still possible to discern subtle changes in your partner's behavior. She became very guarded, not only about her phone but also about herself in general. When you reunite with your partner after 6 months, it is only natural to desire intimacy. In the past, she used to eagerly embrace me on the very night of my arrival. However, this time she seemed hesitant. I asked her what was wrong, and she replied. Her demeanor resembled that of a shy, inexperienced schoolgirl, merely going along with the motions and showing no initiative. I sensed that she was hiding something, perhaps fearing that I might discover it. I confronted her, but she refused to acknowledge anything unusual. However, over the next few days, she returned to her usual self. I am not proud to admit it, but that very night, after she fell asleep, I snooped into her phone. To my surprise, I found nothing suspicious. Her conversations with her boss consisted solely of work-related matters. I inquired about other matters that did not involve any questionable phone calls or incriminating content in her phone when she was away at work. I also questioned my son about the details of the Dublin trip, but he did not reveal anything out of the ordinary. After returning to work after the holidays, I felt content and relieved. 1 week ago, Jill informed me that she was going on a 2-day work trip to Florida with her boss. This time, our son would not be accompanying them due to his upcoming exams. He will be staying with my in-laws. I am uncertain as to whether I am overreacting, but I am unable to dispel this uneasy feeling about the situation. I inquired as to who would be joining them, and she informed me that it would be just her and her boss. What strikes me as odd is that her company has 2 founders, yet she consistently travels with only one of them. I am unsure if I am being overly suspicious, but I wish to address these concerns. It would be beneficial to address concerns at an early stage, rather than ignoring potential warning signs and subsequently regretting this decision. I would be grateful to hear from anyone who has experienced a similar situation. I would appreciate any advice or tips that could be shared. I would like to introduce a new topic. Good morning, everyone. It has been a considerable amount of time since my previous post. During this period of inactivity, I connected with several men who, like me, were deployed away from their hometowns and faced similar situations. Many of them, upon hearing about my circumstances, advised me to give Jill the benefit of the doubt, especially since I could not find any concrete evidence of her infidelity. I chose to do just that. Following her trips to Dublin and Florida, she embarked on numerous work journeys to cities such as Amsterdam and Seattle. Interestingly, she never visited Chicago, where I reside. I was recently promoted for the second time, which came with a substantial salary increase. I was pleased when I received the news and immediately called Jill to share my joy. However, her reaction was not enthusiastic. It became clear that my promotion meant that she and our son could finally move in with me. I asked her if she was not pleased about my hard work. I had dedicated 4 years to this job, often working double shifts with the sole aim of earning this promotion so that I could reunite with my family. She expressed happiness about the promotion itself but hesitated about relocating to a new place. She explained that she had put in a lot of effort to rebuild her career and that she did not want to start over again. I suggested she could find a new job in Chicago, but she was not keen on that idea. She mentioned that she anticipated a promotion and had put in a considerable amount of effort was expended in establishing herself in the company. She was now resolved not to depart without securing the aforementioned promotion. It was challenging to accept this decision because she appeared to be resisting the idea personally. If presented with the opportunity, I would have gladly relinquished my position to be with my family. Despite her significantly lower salary in comparison to mine, she could have readily secured a similar paying position in this organization. However, she was not willing to make the transition. This disagreement resulted in numerous disputes and arguments between us. Initially, she cited how the school and curriculum at her son's current educational establishment were cited as reasons for her reluctance to relocate. He is passionate about soccer and has been receiving training at a local club. I assured her that I could find him a suitable training club in this area, but she was hesitant, stating that moving would disrupt her son's life entirely. While some of her points were valid, I was left with the impression that she simply did not want to share a home with me. Ultimately, we reached an agreement to wait another year, save more money and then reconsider this decision. Subsequently, Jill expressed her desire to relocate to Chicago with me. I inquired as to the cause of this sudden change of heart. She explained that she had reconsidered her position and felt that our son needed me. This realization had occurred just a few months prior, during our arguments. She had previously argued against disrupting our son's curriculum. Our son's academic year had just concluded, making it convenient for us to enroll him in a new school in Chicago. However, now that the new academic session has commenced, it would be quite challenging to secure mid-year admission for him. I proposed that we postpone our relocation until the following year, but she was adamant about moving in together. When I inquired about her employment status, she indicated her willingness to resign, emphasizing that her family comes before all else. I am uncertain about the motivation behind this sudden change of heart. This abrupt change in her behavior has prompted me to consider the possibility that she may have ulterior motives. She has even reached the point where she is prepared to postpone our son's academic session by a year. I have discussed this with some of my local colleagues, who have assured me of their assistance in facilitating our son's mid-session admission. I am making preparations for everything else to join me here, including housing, vehicle and school enrollment. However, I am unable to dismiss the possibility that her motivations extend beyond a desire to be with me. Update 2: My wife was indeed having an affair. I discovered the truth when she moved with me to Chicago. As I mentioned in my previous update, she suddenly expressed her desire to relocate with me and was willing to quit her job. I experienced a complex emotional response, comprising elements of happiness and I was initially suspicious of the situation, but I made all the necessary arrangements for them. My cousin, who had referred me to this job, helped me secure my son's admission in the same academic year and find an affordable rental apartment. Consequently, Jill and my son moved in with me. I was delighted with this turn of events. However, as time passed, I began to notice that Jill had changed from the woman I had married. It is natural for people to change over time. Over time, this transformation was not positive. She became irritable and guarded whenever I approached her about it. She attributed it to missing our hometown friends and family back there. I could empathize with her since I had also been away from family for an extended period. However, one night I stumbled upon her in tears during a phone call. I inadvertently overheard her conversation and realized she was pleading with someone to take her back. Instead of concealing or investigating further, I decided to confront her. After the call ended, I confronted her. I had heard everything clearly and she did not deny or manipulate the situation. She confessed to everything. It transpired that her young boss had an intimate relationship with her. This began during their first trip to Dublin after a successful investment deal. They celebrated so joyously and consumed enough alcohol to lose control and engage in such acts. Following that, they continued their involvement every night after our son had gone to sleep. This revelation left me so repulsed. I was impelled to confront her about it immediately. Their physical relationship continued beyond the initial trip, and on subsequent business trips, it appeared to be more akin to a rendezvous than a work assignment. This was the reason she was reluctant to leave her job. However, when she informed her boss that I wanted her to be with me, but she declined because of him, he became apprehensive and assured her that he was not serious about their physical involvement. He encouraged her to prioritize her family over him. This information caused her considerable distress, despite her awareness that the relationship was casual. She experienced emotional hurt due to his lack of emotional investment, which was evident from his introduction of her to the woman he was casually dating. It was clear that he viewed her as merely a physical object of desire. It is evident that he had no intention of marrying her or entering into a serious commitment. It is difficult to comprehend why she would choose to trade her marriage for such a superficial physical relationship when the CEO did not reciprocate her feelings. She perceived this as a personal affront and consequently opted to relinquish her position at the company. He did not inquire about the rationale behind her decision and accepted her resignation. It appeared that he was eager to terminate their professional relationship. She had assumed that he would plead with her to remain, but he did not. As the proprietor of the company, he had numerous other potential partners, so there was no reason for him to pursue her. She was merely a readily accessible source of entertainment for him, and he capitalized on the situation. She made a miscalculation in taking him seriously. Now she is contacting him and imploring him to take her back, but he is urging her to move on. It is surprising to learn that she was willing to become his mistress, as she revealed during their conversation. I inquired as to how she managed to carry on this affair for so long. She explained that their interactions occurred in person and that they shared the same workspace for 8 to 10 hours a day. This clarified why I could not find any evidence on her phone. They did not exchange texts or calls during my 15-day home visits because they were physically together for a significant portion of the day. The subject reported that she had engaged in sexual intercourse with her boss on numerous occasions at his place of work. She stated that her boss was not emotionally invested in her and therefore did not require further communication. The subject reported that her boss sought physical involvement and she willingly provided it within the confines of his office. The subject admitted this to me. She also reported that they engaged in regular intimate encounters in his office, ensuring the doors were locked and the office camera was turned off. This revelation weighed heavily on my mind. I asked the subject to leave me alone. By the time the confrontation concluded at sunrise, I slept throughout the day, waking in the evening to find my favorite meal prepared by her. She acted as if everything was normal, suggesting we start anew. However, I firmly declined, stating that I had been working tirelessly to secure a better life for my family while she was involved with her CEO. She expressed surprise when I mentioned the word divorce, asking how I could do this to her. I had sacrificed everything for her, she said, and stood by her through thick and thin. It is difficult to reconcile the current circumstances with the past. When we were both struggling financially, she provided invaluable support. However, she also engaged in infidelity. I, too, fulfilled my role as a good husband, despite the challenges of long-distance relationships. I longed for a family and a fulfilling intimate life. Unlike her, I did not resort to infidelity. Despite her apologies and numerous promises, I remained resolute in my decision. I informed her that I would be booking her return tickets and sending that the dissolution of the marriage will be formalized shortly. Fortunately, a prenuptial agreement was in place, which will have significant financial implications. Further details will be provided in the next update. Currently, my emotional state is highly unstable. I have vacated the family home and am residing in the company dormitory. A final update will be provided once the current situation has been resolved. Update 3. I would like to express my gratitude for all the support I have received. Some individuals have suggested that I may have overlooked certain warning signs and that wives are more likely to cheat in long-distance relationships. I would like to clarify that I was vigilant from the outset. I noticed even the slightest change in her behavior and openly discussed it. I made daily calls to her and had transparent conversations on a regular basis. I even checked her phone during my visits home. I am unsure what more I could have done to prevent the infidelity. Consequently, the divorce proceedings have now commenced. I have arranged for their return tickets home. My son is still the child in question, is still very young and unable to live without his mother. Given my work situation, it is not feasible for me to care for him alone. Furthermore, he has been away from me for so many years, and it would not be in his best interest to remain with me at this time. I am hopeful that, as he matures and understands the situation, he will come to understand my decision. Jill pleaded with me, explaining that she had lost everything and lacked the means to support herself. I offered to let her stay in the house. Until I returned to our hometown, we had a prenuptial agreement that prevented her from making any claims on my property in the event of a divorce due to infidelity. As a result, she was unable to gain access to my house. I agreed to provide child support for our son, ensuring that she would not receive any financial compensation from the divorce. Despite this, she continued to contact me, requesting one last chance to repair our relationship. She remained hopeful that I would forgive her for the sake of our son. It is accurate to conclude that some individuals elect to pardon their unfaithful partner for the benefit of their offspring. Regardless of how one may perceive this decision, I was not prepared to reconcile with her merely to preserve the facade of a contented marriage for my son. Following an extended period of contention, the dissolution of the marriage was ultimately formalized and she departed with no tangible assets. Additionally, she lost her employment, and her former superior provided unfavorable feedback in her reference letter, citing her proclivity for abrupt resignation without cause. She resigned from her position. Subsequently, she has been unable to obtain employment from reputable companies on 2 occasions. Additionally, the corporate industry has been experiencing challenging market conditions for the past year. On occasion, she sends me voicemails attributing her difficulties to my actions. However, I do not respond, as I wish for her to be aware that I am aware of her communications. Nevertheless, her circumstances have not affected me. It is important for her to understand that I no longer have any feelings for her.